Hello, and welcome to Dreamy Tales, a sanctuary where everyone can experience calm and a touch of magic before gently drifting into sleep. Tonight, we invite you on another enchanting journey, a story that helps soothe the mind and nurture a sense of peace. Before we begin, let's take a moment to prepare our bodies and minds for a comforting, restorative rest. Make yourself cozy, and with each slow inhale and long exhale, let the cares of the day gradually slip away. It's not always easy to step back from the day's demands, especially as night falls. Yet, remember, the less we worry about how quickly we'll fall asleep, the simpler it is for our minds to release any remaining tension. Allow the gentle flow of your breathing to wash away lingering concerns, and let the story ahead guide you into a state of deep relaxation. Now, settle in, and let the dreamy atmosphere softly wrap around you. Enjoy this story, and may you drift into a peaceful, restful slumber here on Dreamy Tales. Clara claimed a small table tucked into the bakery's corner, a perch beside the window. Outside, the late afternoon sky nursed a choleric temper. Daylight along the Maine coast surrendered early in these autumn days, a retreat hastened now by bruised clouds galloping overhead. Confused by the premature twilight, a few street lamps along the thoroughfare already cast hesitant pools of illumination. Indoors, where Clara sat, the contrast with the gloomy chill could not have been starker. Though closing time hovered near, the air hung thick and comforting, with the mingled scents of coffee and baking bread. The shop breathed quietude, nearly deserted save for a scattering of patrons securing last-minute provisions. A woman vanished through the door, clutching a box of delicate cookies, destined, perhaps, for an intimate supper gathering. Periodically, the coffee machine sighed a plume of steam, its own contribution to the ambient warmth. Through the window pane, Clara watched Main Street storefronts gleam against the deepening murk. A town-wide competition seemed underway, judging by the whimsically garbed straw figures sheltered in various doorways, cheerful sentinels guarding the threshold of Halloween. They looked entirely at ease amidst the tiny, swirling cyclones of leaves that materialized in their alcoves. Around them, October's final foliage relinquished its hold, taking flight on the wind. Clara found herself back in this region, territory first scouted during the summer while delving into the lore of the Rockland Breakwater Light. A devotee of lighthouses her entire life, she had spent months intermittently tracing the Maine coastline, paying homage to its historical beacons. That previous journey, however, had been curtailed by time's constraints and other pressing demands, leaving parts of her itinerary unfulfilled. Discovering her route would bring her nearby once more felt like a serendipitous chance to finally explore the Maine Lighthouse Museum before continuing onward. The adjacent Owl's Head Light also beckoned, famed for possessing one of Maine's last operational Fresnel lenses and reportedly a vista of breathtaking beauty. The museum's website proclaimed it the nation's largest repository of its kind, housing an immense collection, lenses, foghorns, relics of maritime vigilance. After months immersed in research, encountering these artifacts firsthand, absorbing the detailed histories, felt profoundly satisfying. Models of renowned lighthouses she'd studied or visited stood in miniature grandeur. Yet, it was always the chronicles of the keepers, their lives interwoven with duty and isolation, that captivated her most. She had lingered far longer than anticipated, wandering the exhibits in blissful solitude. The tourist tide had ebbed. Retrospectively, her timing was perfect. Emerging from the museum's quietude into wind-lashed streets had been jarring. Seeking refuge in this bakery felt like a natural consequence. Her lodging for the night, an inn situated just outside town, wasn't ready for check-in yet. A cup of sweet, milky tea offered the ideal pretext to burrow into a welcoming corner of this charming local haven before venturing down the peninsula. The bell above the bakery door chimed brightly as another late customer offered a waved farewell to the staff and slipped into the October cold. Pulled from her thoughts, Clara knew her own departure was imminent. She took another sip of tea, then retrieved a small notebook from her bag, intending to refresh her memory on the particulars of Owl's Head Light before tomorrow's visit. She nodded, mentally ticking off the details. Commissioned in 1825 under President John Quincy Adams's authority. Positioned strategically on a peninsula thrusting into Penobscot Bay, just east of Rockland. Like many of its contemporaries, Owl's Head was initially fashioned from rubble stone, a likely cost-saving measure, but its swift deterioration necessitated a sturdier brick reconstruction in 1852. The tower itself was rather diminutive, a mere 30 feet tall, yet perched atop a bluff nearly 100 feet above the waves, its beam carried impressively far across the bay. The modest fourth-order Fresnel lens, installed post-renovation, proved sufficient to project light some 18 nautical miles, not colossal in the grand hierarchy of lenses, as Clara's recent studies had taught her. Draining the last of her tea, Clara set the notebook down. The narrative of this compact lighthouse seemed relatively unadorned. Primarily, she anticipated the view. A quote attributed to Samuel Adams Drake, discovered in his book The Pine Tree Coast, had lodged itself in her mind. Owl's Head ushers at once upon a scene almost too beautiful to profane with speech. When we are looking at it, impossible to find language to do it justice. Whether this held true amidst late autumn's dun austerity remained to be seen, but she was eager to judge for herself come morning. Clara folded the notebook, tucking it away. Rising somewhat reluctantly from her snug window haven, she cleared her table, donned her warm coat, and wound a soft scarf around her neck. Pushing open the door, she stepped back into the brisk air. Now, nearly all the street lights concurred on the lateness of the hour, casting a soft, uniform glow along the pavement. Clara walked past the Vintage Theater's neon marquee to where her car waited. She slid gratefully into the comparative warmth of the driver's seat, placing her bag beside her. With the engine humming faithfully and heat whispering from the vents, she activated the navigation, aiming the vehicle toward her shelter for this blustery night. The bed and breakfast wasn't distant. Driving south as the town receded, she passed a turnoff she recognized as the route to the lighthouse. Tonight, however, the allure was simply cozying indoors. Glimpses of the harbor flickered to her left before the road veered slightly inland, flanked by dense thickets. A weathered sign, barely decipherable in the fading light, announced her entry into the town that grew from sea and stone. Perhaps 10 minutes elapsed before she arrived amidst a small constellation of houses and businesses encircling a cove. Gratitude swelled for her navigation system. Addresses proved elusive in the near-total darkness. Nevertheless, she located the correct driveway on her first attempt, pulling into an empty space. She might indeed be the sole guest tonight, she mused. Clara opened her car door into a rising wind, retrieved her overnight bag from the trunk, and, head bowed against the gusts, hurried onto the covered porch. She opened the front door of the house, wrestled her luggage inside, and pulled the door shut, instantly sealing out the autumn chill. She paused in the entryway, catching her breath. The house felt old, perhaps a former farmhouse, she speculated. Not grand, but undeniably cozy. Her gaze fell to the rustic, wide wooden planks underfoot, then shifted through a nearby doorway into a living room where flames danced merrily in a hearth. A small desk stood before her bearing a bell. Before she could ring it, however, footsteps approached rapidly from the rear of the house. A woman appeared, casually clad in jeans and an apron, looking as though summoned directly from the kitchen. A broad smile bloomed on her face as she introduced herself as Martha, welcoming Clara with polite apologies for her informal attire. Clara reassured her, laughing, that she hadn't expected formality, the feeling strengthening that this was indeed the inn's quiet season. The atmosphere was pleasingly relaxed. Martha led Clara upstairs, showing her to her room. "You're our only guest tonight," she explained, "so I gave you the big room with the pretty view." Clara expressed her thanks, imagining the pleasure of seeing the vista revealed by morning light. Her host then extended an invitation for a light supper downstairs once she was settled. "With no one else expected," Martha added, "I thought you might enjoy a bite by the fireside. Does that sound appealing?" "It sounded utterly marvelous," Clara confirmed. With that, Martha departed, closing the door softly behind her. Clara surveyed her room. It did possess what seemed like excellent windows, though the current darkness offered no hint of the promised panorama. Drawing the curtains against the night, she took stock of the welcoming space. A queen-size bed dominated the center, adorned with a patchwork quilt and crisp white sheets. Hardwood floors, mirroring those downstairs, lent warmth, softened by an oval braided rug. An antique chest of drawers stood nearby, surmounted by a charming old lamp, casting a golden circle of light. The walls wore wallpaper patterned with delicate florals. The entire room felt both spacious and snug. She anticipated reading in bed later. This was the perfect sanctuary for the night. After smoothing her wind-tousled hair in the mirror and arranging a few belongings, she decided to head downstairs. Hunger wasn't pressing, but the fireside beckoned irresistibly. book in hand, she left her bedroom refuge, descending the slightly creaking stairs back to the living room. Several immense, soft armchairs and a small sofa clustered around the fireplace. Clara chose one, sinking gratefully into its embrace, drawn to the gently flickering flames. The room was tastefully appointed with bookcases and intimate furniture groupings, suggesting conversational nooks. A bay window presumably overlooked the street, though the darkness outside veiled everything. Street lights were sparse in this small riverside hamlet. After a few moments, Martha reappeared, poking her head around the corner to offer dinner options. Clara gratefully accepted a bowl of seafood chowder and a green salad. Martha promised a swift return with a tray and vanished once more. Clara leaned back into the armchair's depths, closing her eyes. The room's only sounds were the rhythmic ticking of a nearby grandfather clock and the fireplace's companionable crackle. Faintly, she could hear Martha moving about in the kitchen, opening and closing cupboards. She was fortunate Martha returned promptly with dinner, as the profound relaxation threatened to lull her to sleep. As it was, a standing tray bearing hot soup, oyster crackers, and a delicate salad materialized before her, just before drowsiness could claim her. While waiting for the soup to cool slightly, Clara inquired if Martha would be dining as well. Martha replied she'd already eaten, but settled into a chair opposite Clara, asking about her morning plans. Breakfast, she reminded Clara, was included. In discussing the details, Clara mentioned her lighthouse visit and her hopes for clear weather. Martha nodded approvingly, affirming the trip's worthiness. Of course, this time of year, you'll only see the lighthouse exterior. Tours aren't running tomorrow. She paused, then added, but the legends are really the best part. Clara froze, spoon midway to her mouth, an eyebrow arched. Legends, she echoed. Such as? Martha leaned forward, eyes twinkling. You mean to tell me you've come all this way without knowing about the ghosts? Clara's research into coastal lighthouses had covered histories, keepers, even equipment specifications, but hauntings were new territory. Intrigued, she broke open her packet of oyster crackers and prompted Martha to elaborate. Settling back, Martha nodded as if merely awaiting the invitation. With the fire casting animate shadows and the wind keening at the windows, she began. The thing is, Martha started, both ghosts said to haunt the lighthouse are quite helpful. Anyone familiar with the keepers and their profound dedication knows they took their duties with utmost seriousness. Nothing deterred them from their tasks, regardless of obstacles. For some, I suppose, that devotion extended into watching over the light permanently. 2 benevolent spirits are said to still guard Owl's head light. The first is a former keeper, though his exact identity remains uncertain. Clara realized she was still poised with a spoonful of chowder. She finished the bite, momentarily distracted by the soup's absolute deliciousness. swallowing the rich, flavorful broth. She dipped her spoon again, awaiting Martha's continuation. With perfect timing, her host resumed. Tales abound of footprints discovered in the snow leading to the lighthouse, described as belonging to workmen's boots. Now, you might think, what's unusual about that? Any man could walk there. But here's the peculiarity. The footprints only ever lead towards the tower. Martha spread her hands dramatically, and, upon following these tracks, astonished keepers have found the brass gleaming and the lens meticulously cleaned. Clara recalled all she'd learned about the sacrosanct nature of daily maintenance. Such spectral assistance would indeed signify a spirit of the most helpful order. Martha wasn't finished with the ghostly keeper. In the 1980s, she continued, a family lived at Owl's Head Light, including their 2-year-old daughter, Annie. Her father apparently found her out of bed one night, whereupon she earnestly informed him, "Fog's rolling in. Time to put the foghorn on." Anyone who spent time around toddlers knows they absorb odd phrases. Yet, the keeper and his wife swore they'd never uttered such words near little Annie. She'd conjured it herself. Martha held up a finger. For years, within the keeper's house, Annie casually mentioned the presence of a bearded man in a blue coat and seaman's cap. Clara realized she'd finished her chowder without noticing, sheepishly placing her spoon beside the empty cracker packet. The spectral keeper was compelling enough, but curiosity about the second spirit now piqued. Martha didn't keep her waiting. Of course, anyone who understands lighthouse keeping knows it often required help from wives, even children. Clara nodded. Her research certainly confirmed this. Martha continued her narrative. There's a benevolent presence many call the Little Lady, seemingly intent on maintaining the household at Owl's Head. Apparently, she enjoys rattling silverware in the keeper's house kitchen. She's also been linked to doors opening and closing inexplicably. Martha shrugged, conveying impartiality. Then she added, a keeper in the late 1980s reported his wife seeing a woman in a white dress gazing out the windows, and their son insisted a lady liked to sit in a chair in his room. People say she imparts a peaceful feeling. Her presence isn't unwelcome. Clara contemplated the two stories, and naturally, after the light was automated in the late 80s, there's no one living there to report if the ghosts remain, she ventured. Martha nodded again, approvingly. Precisely. For all we know, the spirits are the only ones keeping a 24-hour watch to this day. Having now dispatched her lovely green salad, Clara leaned back in the plush armchair, folding her napkin on the tray. Martha paused, asking if she'd care for some hot cider. Clara agreed enthusiastically, and her host carried the tray to the kitchen to fetch their drinks. Sinking a little lower in her seat, Clara watched the mesmerizing flicker in the hearth, a warm languor beginning to weigh down her limbs. Martha returned bearing 2 steaming mugs, releasing a delicious aroma of apples into the room. She placed a cup on the side table between them and resumed her seat. Of course, she began anew. My favorite story about Owl's Head Light isn't ghostly at all. It involves a truly heroic dog named Spot. At this, Clara's eyes widened. She lifted her hot cider, blowing gently to cool it, pausing to inhale the comforting, spicy fragrance with closed eyes, before asking Martha to tell her about Spot. Her host obliged readily. During the 1930s and 40s, a keeper resided at the lighthouse with his family, including 2 daughters, Millie and Pauline. Legend holds they trained their Springer Spaniel, Spot, to ring the fog bell by tugging its rope whenever a boat passed. It became customary for passing vessels to answer with a bell ring or horn toot. Spot held particular affection for the mail boat from Martinicus Island. The mailman, Silas Croft, was known for bringing treats. Predictably, the dog always reacted to the unique thrum of his engine. Well, one ferocious storm night, snowbanks completely buried the fog bell. Meanwhile, Silas needed that bell more desperately than ever to navigate past the rocks at the cliff base. As the tale goes, hearing the mailboat's approach, Spot scratched frantically to be let out. He raced to the shore and commenced barking furiously. Silas managed to whistle back in response, successfully steering clear of the treacherous rocks. Thus, Spot became a hero. He's no phantom, but you'll find him immortalized at the lighthouse. A plaque commemorates him there. Such a very good boy. Martha smiled at the image of the plucky spaniel, sipping her cider. Clara smiled too. She savored the last of her steaming drink, setting the mug down. Leaning her head back against the chair, she regarded the fireplace thoughtfully. "I'm so glad I heard these stories before visiting," she said to Martha. "And to think, all I was anticipating was a view." Martha chuckled in accord. "You'll likely have the place entirely to yourself this time of year," she remarked. "You can visit Spot's Memorial in peace, and the weather forecast looks promising for tomorrow." Both women glanced towards the rattling window panes, sitting in companionable silence for a moment, listening to the old house creak comfortably around them. Sensing the perfect moment for departure, perhaps, Martha rose and collected their empty mugs. She informed Clara that warm muffins and fruit would await her in the kitchen any time after 7 a.m. With a kind nod and a wish for a good night, she disappeared once more towards the back of the house. The fire's warmth and the chair's embrace made the prospect of climbing the stairs unappealing, yet the comfortable bed beckoned. Eventually, Clara roused herself from her spot in the sitting room and ascended quietly. The hour wasn't excessively late, but the profound darkness and wild weather outside lent bedtime an extra allure. Changed into pajamas, teeth brushed, Clara gratefully pulled back the cheerful quilt, nestling into the crisp white sheets. The bed was immensely comfortable. She tucked the covers snugly under her arms stretching luxuriously towards the foot of the mattress with a contented exhale. A brief attempt to read proved futile. Words soon blurred. Within minutes, she surrendered the effort to remain awake. Switching off the lamp, she drifted onto a sea of dreams, lulled asleep by the gentle percussion of tree branches against the window pane. The store. That night, Clara dreamt of her pilgrimage to the little white Owl's Head lighthouse. In Sleep's theater, she awoke to a sun-drenched autumn morning. Her imagined window view revealed a glittering river meeting the Gulf of Maine beyond the village, sunlight executing a merry ballet upon the deepest blue water she had ever conceived. In this lucid dream, she descended to the sun-soaked farmhouse kitchen to discover a basket of warm, crumbly muffins awaiting her, alongside a steaming mug of coffee. She savored each bite, the exquisite fusion of blueberries and the pearl sugar crusting the baked treats. Coffee steam wove through sunbeams at the kitchen table, fortifying her against the crisp autumn air anticipated outdoors. Then, with the fluid logic of dreams, she was suddenly in her car, luggage neatly stowed. She navigated a road leading north towards Owl's Head State Park. Dense stands of trees flowed past, some evergreen, others clinging to the last russet vestiges of autumn foliage upon sparsely clad limbs. Sunlight probed eagerly between them, claiming newly vacant spaces for the winter. Nearing her destination, the harbor waters sparkled to her left. Small boats chugged purposefully away from town on their daily errands. And then, arrival. She parked in a lot utterly devoid of other visitors. Stepping into the October air, Clara followed a wide gravel path. To one side, the height of the promontory was evident. To her right, glimpses of the bay shimmered between trees, promising the sweeping vistas yet to unfold. The lighthouse materialized before her. A neat keeper's cottage stood sentinel to her left, while the bright white brick tower of Owl's Head Light crowned a steep ascent. Stairs zigzagged abruptly upwards, an invitation to climb towards the heavens. She ascended slowly, turned at the summit, and released a sigh of pure contentment. The panorama unfurled exactly as magnificent as hoped. The grassy hillside, faded to autumnal golds and rusts, yielded to the craggy headland plunging into the water. Beyond lay an expanse of churning depths, aqua and sapphire, stretching from horizon to horizon. In the distance, through dissipating morning mist, land masses emerged like hazy apparitions. Peninsulas? Islands? Clara couldn't discern. She knew only this. In that breathtaking, luminous moment, enveloped by the bracing, salty breeze, she was weaving herself into the tapestry of Owl's Head's history. Drifting effortlessly through her dreamscape, she stood there for a minute, perhaps an hour. Eventually, she found herself before a simple stone marker inscribed, Spot, the lighthouse dog, reading this plain epitaph. Etched forever onto this isolated hillside above the sea, Clara smiled inwardly just before waking, imbued with a comforting certainty that this unassuming beacon would forever possess faithful guardians watching over it. The parchment dry leaves shatter under your boots as you meander down the country lane. Ahead, suspended from an old sun-silvered wooden gate, A carved slab points towards your destination. Ember Hollow Farm. Far horizons cradle forested mountains swathed in autumn's burnished tapestry. Here, though, the land yields, flattening into fields ripe for cultivation, perfect ground for pumpkins. Above, the sky stretches, a tender blue canvas scattered with clouds like drifts of cottonwood fluff. Your gaze lowers, snagging on a flawless maple leaf resting near the immense red and yellow tree beside you. Bending, you carefully pinch its stem. Held aloft against the sun's diffused radiance, its intricate structure is a marvel. Unlike its brittle brethren scattered about, this one retains a supple memory of moisture, firm yet yielding. Too exquisite to abandon, you decide, tucking it gently into your satchel, a memento. Approaching the gate, a cool zephyr sighs past, whispering through the weave of your shirt. Instinctively, you draw your fine wool scarf a fraction closer, a small defense against the chill. The gate's metal closure feels cool beneath your thumb as you lift it. A rattle and groan echo its venerable age. Decades, surely, it has stood sentinel on this farm. You secure the latch behind you with a soft click. Turning, the air greets you, thick with the warm perfume of mature pumpkins, mingled with the sweet, sharp tang of apples. The pumpkin patch unfurls from a short dirt avenue flanked by tall, slender trees. Leaves in every shade of fire and earth, scarlet, gold, russet, ochre, pattern the pale trail. Some protest with a crisp report beneath your shoes. Others, still soft, offer only silence. You, near a small timbered booth, the threshold for entry. A woman, Ilara, sits within, offering a warm welcome. Kind words are exchanged, a brief communion. You retrieve the necessary cash from your pocket, placing it in her hand. Her smile accompanies the metallic clink of the money box opening. She presents a ticket. You trace its papery surface with your fingertips, turning it over once, twice, before securing it in your pocket. Past the booth, the full panorama of Ember Hollow Farm reveals itself. Gourds proliferate, a cornucopia of size and hue. Diminutive orange pie pumpkins nestle near the pale, spectral allure of ghost pumpkins. You pause, admiring the stark beauty of the white ones, their glossy flanks crowned with thick, dark stems. How might they taste? Acrid or ambrosial? The thought drifts idly. It's been too long since your last visit. You'd nearly forgotten the sheer bounteous invention of nature. Verdant globes, speckled yellows, even party-colored wonders lie scattered across the field. Your eyes roam further, discovering more than just pumpkins. A white barn with a stark black roof stands nearby, an architectural echo of the ghost pumpkins. Signs beckon towards a corn maze, an apple orchard, hay rides, a bonfire. An especially inviting nook promises treats and warm beverages. A definite future indulgence, you resolve. To your right, a large map is mounted on a sturdy signpost. You trace a route to the apple orchard, etching the farm's layout into your mind. towards the orchard you head, questing for the quintessential crisp, crimson apple. For a time, you follow a narrow path bordered by displays of painted pumpkins, whimsical autumnal decorations, and substantial hay bales. A glance around confirms a pleasing tranquility. Families and small groups dot the landscape, but it's far from overrun. The promise of a peaceful excursion settles warmly within you. Soon you arrive. The orchard is intimate, perhaps a dozen trees strong, yet each limb drips with plump, ruby fruit and leaves of startling vibrancy. Both apples and leaves form a scattered carpet upon the faded grass beneath. A delicate breeze murmurs through the branches, the crisp air brushing your arms. Though clad in a warm cardigan and scarf, the light wind finds the tiny interstices in the knit. Yet, bathed in the gentle autumn sun, cocooned in wool, a profound sense of cozy comfort envelops you. Wandering slowly, you witness a gleaming red apple detach itself from a branch just ahead. It strikes the ground softly, bouncing once before settling into a drift of leaves. Intrigued, you approach. Leaves rustle like secrets whispered as your hand delves into the pile. The apple feels solid, cool in your palm. You turn it, scrutinizing its surface for blemishes, but find none. Glossy, smooth, perfectly ripe. Surely this fruit was destined for you. Exiting the orchard along another dusky path, you encounter a cluster of wooden signs, arrows pointing divergently. One declares candied apples. You had envisioned savoring a simple, unadorned apple. But now, a new craving stirs. Fruit clutched firmly, you follow the arrow's directive. A minute or two of walking brings you to the stand. Here, freshly prepared candied and caramel apples gleam, adorned with various toppings. Yet, the option to craft your own exists. After a brief chat with Silas, the easygoing farmer presiding over the booth, he hands you a pointed wooden stick. Carefully, you impale the apple, driving the stick through its base into the core. Assured of its secure perch, you slowly submerge it into a vat of molten caramel. The intoxicating scent of smoky, liquefied sugar ascends, and the viscous, hot fluid cascades over the apple's skin. Your mouth waters in anticipation. As a final flourish, you roll the sticky orb across a bed of chopped peanuts. Perfection. You thank Silas for his assistance, turning away towards the main patch, just as a pair of children, hands clasped, dart past, their faces alight with eagerness for their own apple-making turn. Presently, a wooden bench appears, offering an ideal spot for repose and indulgence. It emits a gentle creak as you settle onto it, yet feels comfortably solid beneath you. From this vantage, the view across the patch is magnificent. A straw scarecrow, clad in linen overalls, stands sentinel amidst hundreds of orange pumpkins, a mosaic of large and small spheres. Lowering your gaze to the caramel apple, you rotate it slowly, admiring your handiwork. Its shiny coat reflects the soft afternoon light and the singular branch of a maple tree arching behind you. Raising it to your lips, you carefully breach the sweet shell. The taste is exactly as memory promised, perhaps even better. You linger on the bench, absorbing the pumpkin kingdom spread before you. In the distance, the jagged line of mountains intersects with an uneven horizon of ripe orange gourds. From this perspective, a chaotic jumble of curly and straight stems seems to prick the skyline. The very air breathes autumn. Whispers of cinnamon and apple intertwine with the earthy fragrances of caramel and pumpkin spice, layered over notes of fallen leaves, rich soil, and dry straw. Every element of this moment conspires to create a feeling of encompassing warmth and ease. The urge to select your own pumpkin stirs, but you quell it for now. Carrying a heavy gourd seems premature with so much yet unexplored. Instead, you simply contemplate the possibilities. Which shape, which size, would best suit your purpose? Your gaze drifts across the patch, observing the quiet ballet of visitors. Families, couples, solitary figures wander through rows of vines and earth. Cameras click, capturing moments. Hands reach down, turning pumpkins, faces alight with curiosity. Small red wagons, fairy children clutching prized gourds, while others carry their chosen squashes tucked securely under an arm. After some time, you rise from the creaking bench, resuming your exploration towards the black and white barn, glimpsed earlier. It lies just beyond the orchard you recently departed. Rather than retracing your steps to the right, you opt for a path veering left. As the day matures, the breeze acquires a sharper edge. You fasten another button on your cardigan, seeking greater warmth, a snugger embrace against the cooling air. Walking towards the barn, you notice crows wheeling overhead, their calls punctuating the quiet sky. You look up, admiring the way the lowering autumnal sun bleeds through the thinning clouds. Another left turn, and you arrive at the quaint barn, centrally located within the patch. It serves as an informal hub, a meeting point for farm staff and visitors alike. You spot two farmers, Jonas and Finn, one with a foot propped casually against the barn wall, deep in conversation. Periodically, each raises a steaming mug held cupped in both hands. One man wears loose overalls over a brown plaid shirt. The other, blue jeans and a simple tucked-in shirt. Both sport sturdy, comfortable-looking boots. Laughter punctuates their easy chat as they savor their warm drinks. The soft susurration of leaves fluttering in a nearby tree captures your attention. Turning, you watch as several detach, spiraling in a graceful descent before settling onto the grass. A few catch the breeze, tossed upwards towards the barn, drawing your gaze along with them. From the corner of your eye, horses, standing within an unpainted picket fence enclosure, they graze with quiet intensity. You watch their slow, methodical cropping of grass, the contented rhythm of their chewing. A smile touches your lips as you observe them from a respectful distance. One is a rich, chocolatey brown, its mane a perfect match. The other, a golden dun with a flaxen mane. A sudden gust lifts the fine hairs of their manes, a fleeting, airy dance. They shake their heads, clearing their vision before returning their focus to the grass. Truly noble, majestic creatures, you reflect. Just then, another farmer, Maeve, emerges from the barn's rear. She begins to groom the chocolate-brown horse, which leans into the attention with apparent pleasure. Deciding it's time to move on, you leave the horses to their quiet communion of brushing and grazing. All around, the pumpkin patch hums with gentle activity. You spot a tractor pulling a wagon laden with hay bales. Families are assembling, anticipating a ride around the farm. You recognize this as a quintessential patch experience, briefly tempted by the thought of the crisp October air rushing past, the gentle jostle of the ride. But you relinquish the idea, leaving it to the waiting groups. As the wagon fills and departs, a sudden quiet descends near the barn. You find yourself almost alone, enveloped in a profound calm. It's no surprise your mind feels serene, utterly relaxed here. A distinct crackling sound drifts towards you from the barn's far side. Recalling the map, you realize this must be the bonfire area. You walk towards the sound, noticing a thin plume of smoke rising as the crackling intensifies. You arrive at a circle formed by cut logs, centered around a medium-sized bonfire glowing warmly amongst protective rocks. The familiar, comforting aroma of burning wood greets your senses. Few things feel more intrinsically autumnal than a bonfire, you muse. The entrance to this enclave is marked by an archway crafted from cut wood, adorned with dried corn stalks. Twin hay bales flank the entrance, each topped with an attractive assortment of squash. Passing through the arch, you admire the thoughtful details evident throughout the farm. Fairy lights are strung overhead, forming a twinkling canopy above the fire pit. Beneath them, sturdy hay bales and logs offer ample seating. To your right, under a covered shelter, vendors dispense treats and warm drinks. The temperature is noticeably dropping as evening approaches. A hot beverage seems the perfect antidote. You happily approach the shelter, drawn in by the pervasive scent of cinnamon and spice. The fire's companionable crackle remains audible behind you, setting an idyllic mood. The menu, handwritten on a chalkboard suspended from a wooden pillar, lists pumpkin spice hot chocolate, warm apple cider, and coffee. After a moment's deliberation, you choose the pumpkin spice hot chocolate. You are at a pumpkin patch after all. The sign proclaims their blend homemade, and the earthy, chocolatey fragrance already seems to beckon you personally. The attendant, Leo smiles as he hands you the drink. It arrives in a dark, green ceramic mug adorned with painted pumpkins. You pay, offer thanks, and wave a brief goodbye. Turning, your gaze returns to the inviting bonfire. A fleeting wish for one just like it in your own backyard surfaces. You picture yourself roasting marshmallows, watching them brown and crisp before yielding to a gooey, sweet interior. Friends gathered close, sharing ghost stories appropriate to the season, huddled near the flames, exchanging tales, warmed by hot cider and tea. The lengthening nights would feel shorter, held at bay by good company. You cross the grass and select a hay bale for a seat. Your palm slides across its surface, registering the rough, dry texture, catching a faint whiff of its dusty scent beneath the dominant notes of the hot chocolate cradled in your hands. You inhale deeply, feeling tension dissolve. Bringing the mug closer, you savor the rich aroma before taking a generous sip. The pleasant warmth spreads through you, an internal soothing. Closing your eyes, you focus purely on sensation. The rustle of leaves in the surrounding maples and birches, the persistent crackle of the nearby fire. The quintessential sense of autumn envelop you. A complex perfume of spice, earth, smoke, and decaying foliage. You feel utterly, profoundly at peace. As the sun dips below the horizon and twilight deepens, the fairy lights seem to intensify their sparkle. The fire radiates a more potent warmth. It has been a truly beautiful day. Now, you simply sit, sipping your hot chocolate, appreciating the season's crisp clarity, the fire's embrace, the wind's soft song. Later, you will find the perfect pumpkin to carry home. And who knows, perhaps that backyard fire pit will become a reality this season. Perhaps friends will gather for homemade pumpkin pies and stories. It doesn't have to remain a dream, you think. Letting the tangible atmosphere of this place seep into your senses. You hold the warm mug with both hands, utterly content, perfectly cozy. You sit, offering silent thanks to the earth for the splendor of autumn, and for this wonderful day spent at Ember Hollow Farm.